Hi, welcome to HANNAM. Today's guests have always seen the funny side of life, so anything could happen. Rob Emu Farley will be joining me later. My first guest, Malcolm Lawrence, was a popular DJ at the legendary La Babaloo Club, and he's here. Malcolm, nice to see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. What time of day it might be, John?
You actually were involved with the Rolling Stones very early on in your life, weren't you?
Well, yes, that was late 50s, early 60s. As there was those days, a lot of rock bands, and I was in a small band that played in a club in Ealing, the ABC Club. One of the other groups that used to appear at the particular time was the Rolling Stones, before they made it famous. Rolling Stones, as you know, gone on quite well ever since, and I'm on the Isle of Wight now.
I want to talk about your very first visit to the Isle of Wight, because you've been living in London, hadn't you, really?
Yes, I was living in a bedsit in South Ealing, Gunnersbury Parkway, and my parents I had my 21st birthday on the mainland, and I came home one day and they'd moved. I think this was they were trying to tell me something. I'm not sure, but I thought I wanted to go and see them. They bought some land in Haven Street, and I wanted to go and visit them, and I stood up all the way. It was a late July day. Stood up from Waterloo on the train, all the way down on the steamer, or one of the paddle steamers, or the old boat Shanklin Ride, or one of those. Got down the pier at Ryde, and the buses were all about. And I asked what time the next bus was to Haven Street, and the bloke said Haven Street. He said, "Oh, well, about 2.5 hours, I think, because they're quite regular on a Saturday." 2.5 hours time. So I had a quick look around. And I looked up Union Street, and there was a pub called the Bobars, which sold courage, which they used to sell in our local at home. So I was quite happy for 2.5 hours, basically, before I took that bumpy ride to Haven Street on a real old charabanc. It was a charabanc back in the 50s.
So when you arrived at Haven Street, what did you think?
Oh, it was beautiful. Utopia. As the coach drove off way down the hill, there was nothing. It was, as I say, it was a late July time, and it was just absolute utopia. My parents had bought some land just as you drive into Haven Street, opposite the post office, and it runs down into a little valley overlooking the copse. And there was just nothing happening, just birds singing. It was a beautiful day, and I thought, oh, I've discovered my paradise. So I went back home and resigned my job and came to the Isle of Wight. It was my first big mistake.
Been here ever since?
Been here ever since.
Now, most of us know you, or knew you first as a DJ at the famous old La Babaloo, but how did you get into that? Were you sort of an extrovert kid?
Yeah, basically.
Were you?
Yeah, so I mean, every class has its clown. I suppose it was me. Always used to get the jokey bits in the school plays and one thing and another. But how did I get? What was the question?
How did you get into being a DJ, really?
Oh, sorry, get into being a DJ. Well, that was just a fluke. I mean, the Babaloo was the in place in those early 60s days, and in fact, this is mid-60s when I actually got the job there, but I was just a patron, if you like, and I went to see one of the... I really fancied having a go at it. I hadn't done it before, but I just fancied having a go. As you say, being a bit of an extrovert, so I can do that, So I went to one of the DJs who was on that, not John Dyer, I think it was, and just said to him, could I have a go at this sometime? And he literally chucked me into the deep, and he said, well, what you do is this, and this is how you do it. He said, I've got to go to the boys' room. He said, have a go. And I literally was, that's how I started it.
But you were a bit different, really, weren't you?
Well, I wasn't that was, this is, or this is, that was type DJ. No, I'd be a bit more visual, I suppose.
They were pretty long nights too, Mark, weren't they?
Quite long. We'd start about 8:30 and in the evening and finish about 8:30 in the morning. Unofficially, of course.
Did you go on to The Cleaner Arrived? Was that true?
Yeah. I mean, it was... we finished about 2 a.m. anyway, officially. By the time it all cleared up and got people off the premises, we had our sort of unwind period, but which would stretch sometimes into the early hours of the morning with the band still playing, and the cleaner would come in and sweep round the bodies and the drunken bodies and just like nothing had happened, and we were still going at 7 in the morning some mornings, boogieing away.
You had a water fight one night too, didn't you?
Yeah, that's one of those sort of instances where somebody flicked something at somebody and so it got on, and it was buckets and glasses, then buckets, and then the whole place was flooded right out, inches of water in there.
You sort of used to entertain the law too late at night, didn't you? Sort of look after them, really.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, really, but...
Well, go on, Mel.
I don't want to sort of down the constabulary of those days. But again, there were a lot of police. There was a big police presence, and what shall I say? A large night shift, probably a dozen policemen in Ryde, and it was the Babaloo was closed, and they'd seen people off the premises and out of the area would tend to come back there for refreshments because we always kept the coffee pot on for them and a sandwich or two. So the best part of the evening shift of Ryde Police was usually up at the back of the Babaloo for their refreshments, as they would call it.
Will you tell me a story of when you were seen running down over Beeper Chute one night?
Oh,
Is it true?
Well, yeah. That was, as I say, we used to stay and do the unwind thing, and we'd get up to maybe just sit and chat some nights. And other nights we'd play silly games like Dare and Bets and what have you. This bet came up with Dave, a guy called Dave Barrett, and I had lost whatever we were doing at the time, and we had to run nude down to the bottom of Whitefield Woods, back up to Westridge petrol station and back into the Babaloo for a bet. So off we set, starkers, down halfway down Whitefield Woods at about 4 in the morning. Up the other, suddenly a pair of headlights appeared coming up Whitefield Woods, and the blue flashing of lights. Oh crikey, we're for it now. It was a couple of the local police, and just wound the window down and said, "Morning, Dave. Morning, Malc. We'll see you a bit later." Then just carried and drove off into the darkness. So we said, "Oh well, we just keep running then." It doesn't look as if we're going to get arrested anyway if he gets reported.
The Five Alive was sort of one of the popular bands at that time, really, weren't they?
Yeah.
Great memories of them, Bernie Cullen and all the boys?
Excellent memories. Certainly with the Five Alive, and we used to have a lot of fun with them. Bernie was good, and Bernie again was an extrovert and a good entertainer. They were a good band, and we'd get to do things. You know, I'd get on and muck about with them quite a bit. There was another good band, and I can't think of the heck who they were. Alex Southcote was the lead singer, who's now quite high up in the fire department here in Newport, isn't he? But I can't think of the name of the group.
There was never sort of trouble there, Malc, was there? No sort of
no trouble.
late night trouble?
No, not that I could think of at all. Maybe the odd altercation, but it was a really happy place. Really happy place. You know, it was full up every weekend, and people did go out and enjoy themselves without any aggravation.
You've actually done a bit of after-dinner speaking too, haven't you? I used to go and watch you sometimes, and you had a lovely little trick, didn't you?
Well,
come on.
I don't know how I got into this after-dinner speaking. I suppose it's because I was known as a bit of a clown, and so I started getting invited to speak at dinners, and I was quite nervous about it. And I did, because when you're in front of maybe 100, 200, 300 people, you think to yourself, how am I going to get their attention? I mean, it's all right knowing people and your mates where you have a laugh and do things that you wouldn't normally do in front of strangers. But I used to break the ice with I'd stand up and sort of be quite strong and fun. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What I had was a hammer, and I used to have a load of old crockery, and I'd sort of, good evening, and I'd pretend it was some of the hotel crockery, wherever it might have been. I'd smash some plates and things, and that would, everybody would look and, what's he got it done there? And I'd do it again and sort of, oh, I'm sorry about that, push a plate out the way and hit another plate. And I used to get everybody's attention, it broke the ice for me, and then I'd go off at whatever I might be doing.
But of course, unbeknown to you, the waiters sort of just appeared at the back, thinking it was their crockery.
Thinking it was their crockery, yeah. That was the stunt. That was the idea of it. I mean, I did one dinner in Shanklin where I couldn't believe it. They were just calling out more and more from the kitchen because these plates kept going. One waiter, two waiters, the chef would come out, and everybody would look, what's he doing with our crockery?
You've been involved with sport quite a bit on the island, and rugby, you sort of got involved with the Hurricanes, didn't you?
Yeah.
Really? You must have a few funny stories. I've got an idea once that you were going across the Severn Bridge and you had a bit of a problem.
The Severn Bridge? Oh, blimey.
Yes?
That was an extraordinary weekend, yeah. That was,
I bet it was.
Well, I was sort of in charge, as it were, whatever I said had to be done, type thing, because I was senior, so I'm in charge, type thing. And I blew a whistle, and it was like a Simon Says. Every time I blew a whistle, we had to listen. People would have to do things. Well, One was buttocks to the left window, buttocks to the right window, buttocks to the back window. And we were doing it on odd occasions down the M4, approaching the Severn Bridge. And at one stage you got to buttocks to the left-hand window, and everybody dived across and knocked the window out just to be approaching this. Unbeknown to us also, when we got there, we were waved off the M4 to a side parking lot with about 10 coppers there, police, because people had moaned and phoned up down the motorway that people were flashing their bottoms. And it wasn't very nice. And we'd also had a few to drink, obviously, as you do at a rugby tour. So we all sat very quiet. We were Paul, and this police contingent was there, and this police sergeant got on. He was the biggest bugger I've ever seen in my life. He must have been about 20 stone, and about 7 foot. A Welsh sergeant come across from the other side. Right, who wants to show me his arse then? and we sat there like all little schoolboys then, you know. Nothing. So we got an earful off of them, and we put this window back in, the back of the coach, put the window back in, and it was upside down. There was a great big buttock marks along top of this window. But he said, well, go and have a good weekend, you know, behave yourselves. Telling a rugby team to behave themselves. And funnily enough, that weekend we got into Cardiff and got there, and it started to snow on the Friday night. We never did play. We never did play rugby at all.
Actually, you had a young guy that played for you that actually went on to play for Wales.
Jonathan
Terrific,
Griffiths, yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, he was. You could see he had the makings of a good player, a bit of a class apart, even as a youngster.
You were sort of minders for him when he started, weren't you, one or two of you?
Well, we looked up, well, not so much me, but more of the forwards, you know, because he was the scrum half behind the pack, so a lot of the big lads used to look after him. People like Ron Tom, Tommy Booth, one or two others, he'd call him his minders, because he was a scrap of a lad. Really, he was so nippy, though, so fast and natural, but of course, when he started playing first team with me, they... opposition would take a lot of advantage of him. He got a few tramplings as a young lad, and then went on to play the ultimate, you know, for his country.
Terrific. Now, just before you go, you've had sort of one or two revival gigs, haven't you, looking back at the sort of Babaloo and great success, really, in recent years.
Yeah. That's Dave Cannon's sort of baby. I mean, I've got to give him credit. He does a lot of hard work about it, but he just felt that if we had a Babaloo revival, that people are now our age, 50, would have somewhere to go. But there isn't anywhere for people to go. So we had this Babaloo 1 and Babaloo 2 that we've done. Been very successful sellouts.
Terrific.
You know.
And you've been on great form.
Yeah, it hasn't been too bad. I keep thinking I don't want to do it, but then I get into it and do it.
Mark, it's always a great pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure, John. Absolutely wonderful.
Lots of luck in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'll be back in a few minutes with Emu Farley.